to have been asked to be a presenter here at the World Psychedelic Forum. I am so proud to be asked to rise to this occasion, and I hope this is a great deal more women in this conference this year than there were 2 years ago, and I hope to see that number growing and more women stepping up and preparing themselves to be leaders in this community of transformation. So. And the question is, what do we tell the children? Our main focus here this weekend is a subject that is illegal throughout the world and a difficult subject. How do we talk to our young people about this subject? So some of the questions, what, if anything, did our parents and teachers tell us? I'm interested in hearing. My parents were not psychedelic users, and many people were not. So, what did our parents and teachers tell us about psychedelics? What are the myths that are being perpetrated by educators and policymakers to our young people? How have Sacramento, using indigenous cultures, introduced the sacred substances to their children? Just get a sense of this in your mind so that you have, really, other places. Many of us are familiar with Aldous Huxley's book, Island, in which the Palanese introduce moksha medicine to the adolescents in their community. And they descend a mountain and they take the moksha at the top of the mountain. And other people have proposed ideal settings and settings for the introduction of entheogens to young people. So I was, visioning my highest aspiration into being, just in my mind. I was just kind of fantasizing, because I'm a visionary artist. And so I was fantasizing what might be an ideal setting that we might introduce entheogens to our young people. And I wanted to share some of that fantasy with you. It's kind of like a dream. So you can think along, too, of what you would include, like how you particularly like to form it. So I was proposing a ceremony for young teens. You can come up with the age yourself. I was thinking, 13 to 15 years old. Designing a ceremony that the teens would prepare themselves for months in advance, and they would meet together and on a regular basis to discuss and prepare for the ceremony. One of the things they would do is they would design garments for themselves, because how they like to dress themselves. So they would design these beautiful garments, and they would learn to make them. They would make tunics or robes or pajamas that they could wear. They'd have to be comfortable and soft, beautiful, whether they be colorful or plain. They would design it for themselves, and each one would be unique. And they would get together and make these garments. And they would also have a special pre-ceremony where they would get together and in a clay studio, and they would, in silence, into beautiful, resonant, deep music, they would sculpt individual chalices, out of clay, that they would take the substance with. So they would design their own chalices. And then finally the day would come, and maybe there'd be 8 to 10, a small group of young people that had gotten to know each other previously, and they would get together at the sacred temple. So you can see where I'm going with this. The sacred chapel. And they would go to this sacred place, and they would bathe, and they would dress, and they would adorn their hair, and they would look beautiful, and they would wear scented oils, and their adult chaperones would come and help them dress and prepare. And they would all meet on the rooftop of this beautiful temple, this open space at sunset. And there'd be an open fire encased in a copper pot. And there'd be this fire, and every young person would meet around the fire. And they would each get a small, a length of rope. And they would tie a knot in the rope for every obstacle that they intended to overcome during this journey. And so they would all tie their knots in their ropes, and they would go to the fire, and they might call out, the obstacle, fear, guilt, and whatever. They throw their ropes into the fire, and they would watch the sunset. And after the sunset, they would all walk together in silence into the temple. And they would walk into an exquisite temple built and adorned by visionary artists and from all over the world, with images inspired by the sacrament and gracing every surface, marble, mosaic, pictorial floor, and paintings, and sculpture, beautiful stained glass, beautiful adorned sculpted ceiling, and calligraphy on the walls with profoundly uplifting messages that others before them had channeled from the divine. World wisdom traditions would be represented everywhere. And they would go inside the temple, and in there they would find their chalices at an altar, completed, fired, and filled with the sacrament. And they would take the sacrament together, and they would each get in line and be handed a candle, and they would walk to a great stone labyrinth, like the one at Chartres Cathedral. And in silence, together, they would walk the labyrinth while their adult chaperones, their parents, who prepared also by meeting secretly and separately, prepared music, song, no words, but just toning and harmony, way off into the sides. You'd hear this resonant sounds of their parents, calling out this harmonious song. And they would walk silently the labyrinth while they held their candle and watched their flame. And after they walked the labyrinth, and as this sacrament was beginning to come on, they would be led by their parents to a stone stairway, spiral staircase going down to a candlelit room, way down in the basement, dark, but only lit by candles, adorned with skulls and statuary of all the sacred teachers from all the wisdom traditions. And there would be mats and pillows for each one individually, round in a circle. And their candle would be laid beside them at a little table. And right beside them, on a little table, would be a golden notebook with a little golden pen. Anything that they wanted to write, any memory that they had, if they channeled the divine, they could jot it down. Basically, everything would be very quiet. Music would be playing that was very resonant and deep. Take them on a journey into their deepest self, possibly difficult territory, really directing their journey into some of the more difficult places, and then out again. And they would stay there for the night, and that would be an all-night ceremony, inwardly focused. And as sunrise approached, they would be led by their chaperones back to the viewing platform on the rooftop so they could watch the sunrise. And there on the rooftop, there would be their chalices again, rinsed and cleaned and filled with hummingbird nectar. To end their journey, they could drink hummingbird nectar together, and there'd be a large plate of just the most delicate berries and fruit, just the lightest thing that they could refresh themselves with. And they would sit around a little copper pot with a fire going, and they would complete their journey together. And that would be my ideal journey for young people. I hope that you'll come to our talk and share your ideal journey, and thank you so much for your attention.